So we're back for another episode here with my main man, Susu Graham. And Susu's not been a good week for Manchester United fans. Like just when you thought things could not get any worse. And that very cryptic post-match response from Coach Ruben Amorim after Grimsby Town dumped Manchester United out. Now, everybody has spoken about the problems of Manchester United, and I look at the team and I ask myself, what else can be done? But we must put Amorim under the scope here. People say the dogma is not helping him. He needs to be able to say, let's walk away from this whole 3-5-2 system that I want to play off. Should I try something new rather than just saying, look, this is me, this is what I want. Until it works, I won't stop.
Yeah, I used to have this argument with Coach Nimley all the time, about United's results since Amorim came and whether the dogma is helping because coaches of the belief that if the players don't fit, let them go. But I was of the belief that at a certain point, as a coach, the results have to justify the dogma. We have to see
Mm,
something that shows the dogma. Look, let's just go through some of the stats I just collected about Amorim. He's been coached for 29 games, Premier League games. Let's focus on the
yeah.
Premier League. 29 Premier League games. He has 28 points. That's a problem. 29 games, 28.7 wins. Now, Graham Potter, if you remember when he was at Chelsea, was slated as one of the worst pointsmen ever. Graham Potter in 22 games had 7 wins. He was doing better than Amorim. And he was sacked.
Yeah.
And when Graham Potter was sacked, did anyone come and say Graham Potter deserved more time? And he was sacked. Everyone said, you know what, this didn't work out. In fact, since Amorim and Potter have been in the league, I did some searching. I just went to check since they've been in the league at the
Mhm.
same time. Potter and Amorim have the same amount of points since Potter was hired. And Potter, who we are saying West Ham should sack him. And I feel bad using Graham Potter just as an example for this, but it just shows that we are not telling the truth about Amorim, really, because what more time do we need to give him? It's been almost a whole season because 29 games is basically three-quarters of a season.
Yeah.
You had 28 points at on game week 30. Which manager would still have their job at that point of Manchester United? Let alone talk of a club like even Fulham, they can sack you for that. You get what I'm saying? But in Amorim's case, you are saying more time. How much did he spend this window? How much was Cunha? 60 million, 70 million. And look, even aside the Grimsby Town results, I think that's just like the ultimate example of this project is not working. I don't think Amorim is a bad coach. You don't win the way he was winning in Portugal if you don't know what you are doing. There's only so much talent can get you. You have to have some coaching because Benfica and Porto are not joking around. They also want to win the league, but they
Yeah.
couldn't win it when he was around. Maybe are we going to say, okay, Victor Gyökeres was the magic formula, so because he had Gyökeres, he was winning time. But I don't think it's that simple because we saw them in the Champions League. They weren't a bad team. They weren't some super elite team that, okay, I think they can win the Champions League. But we saw them against other European teams getting decent
Mhm.
results. So they weren't that bad. So it's kind of strange to me that he's come to Manchester United and he can't get anything. And for
But,
me,
but,
the
but,
dogma
let
is
me, but let me ask you this though. Yeah, but shouldn't there be a sight at the players as well? Because one would ask, like, why can't they seem to pick up what he's trying to teach? We've seen him teach what when he left, he taught Casapia this method in a month after they initially struggled. He went to Sporting, who were playing a very different system before he got there, made the changes that needed to be made, and still got them to adapt to the system in a very, very, very speedy manner. Why is it that Manchester United players, this group of players, just can't seem to pick it up? Because, hey, what we do know is that players are taught to play in a myriad of ways. Why can't they just pick it up and go?
You see, I think this Manchester United players thing, right, is a bit overrated. And the reason I say this is that every coach is bringing new players. So the
Mm,
idea that these players are the players who sacked Mourinho, the players who sacked Ten Hag, the players it's not true. Because by the time Ten Hag was leaving, a lot of the Mourinho players were gone. And
mhm.
now Amorim has also brought his players, and they still can't pick up the system. So for me, I don't know what it is. I can't because it's for me, it's difficult to blame the players because we've seen. And sorry, I just remembered Oli. He was the one I forgot. Oli too brought his players. Then we said the players sacked Oli. We keep saying the players, but there's been so much turnover with players. find it difficult for us to keep this that is the player sacking the coach. I don't know what it is. And look,
I'm not
just
saying
to
the
talk
players are
about
not the coach, but they can't seem to pick up the system.
look,
They didn't
I
pick up
find
Ten
that
Hag's. Look. Let's if since we're doing this, they didn't pick up Ten Hag's system. Ole's system was basically hit and run, which is not a system. Although it was effective, it got him a second and it got him second once, I think, but it just wasn't effective. But at a certain point, you must ask the question: why can't you grasp basic concepts?
I don't know. Maybe the system itself. He's asked, you see, we all know about players and what their best optimum positions are. Because for me, I don't see any bad players in the Manchester United squad. I know a lot of people would disagree, but I don't see bad players at all. Look, the Grimsby Town game, they had 9 full internationals playing that game, right? But look at how they just couldn't rise up to the occasion. I don't even know what it is because it's so difficult. Because if you look at it logically, the players should be good enough. The coach should be good enough. But
Mhm.
some way, somehow, we're not seeing the results. Because look, for me, he's beaten 7 teams since he came into the league. Everton, City, Southampton, Fulham, Ipswich, Leicester, Villa, right?
Yeah,
That's the 7 wins. 3 of them are not in the league anymore, right?
yeah.
So he's beaten 4 teams that are still in the league. And that's the most concerning part because it's just not working. And like you're saying, okay, why aren't the players grasping it? Maybe the system is just easy to figure out for other teams. So even if the players are executing the way he wants, other coaches are just able to react. Because if you remember Marco Silva's interview, he sounded like he was just saying that, oh yeah, we knew what they were going to do. So we did this and this and this, and we played against it. If he's so rigid in his system, and for me, that's my biggest issue. And for me, the most disgraceful part of the Grimsby Town game was his halftime changes. You are 2 goals down against a League Two team. Take off a centre back and attack. You make sure you have 3 centre backs on the pitch still. I just couldn't believe, like, when I looked at the stats, why would you do that? Like, at that point, what do you need the 3 at the back for? What security? You need to throw the kitchen sink at them and score 4 goals. Eventually, they got the equalizer and whatnot, but I think it's too rigid. And I know you have to also make your mark. You have to take control of the situation. You can't bow to the players. But if your system is so bad that you can't beat Grimsby Town, the system is not worth persisting with.
Dying
Something has
over.
to give.
Then it means,
Something has to give.
but we've seen, and maybe he needs to take a note from the Antonio Conte book of coaching when he got to Chelsea, because we do realize the changes that had to be made to get Chelsea on that winning run when he brought in Victor Moses and co. And
Remember, Conte
it wasn't
started with a
working.
4-2-4. He started with a
Yeah,
4-2-4.
it
That's
wasn't
what he
working.
wanted to play. And
Yeah.
if you remember that Arsenal Chelsea game where N'Golo Kante was trying to chase, was it Ozil or somebody?
Also,
And he basically fell flat on his face because the system was too open. I think Conte saw that and was like, you know what? This is not happening. Even last season, Conte was switching formations 3-5-2 in some games, 4-3-3 in some games, 4-2-3-1 in some games. I think the idea, like, he switches formations when he has to. He looks at his players. Look at Ancelotti. When Ancelotti was at Milan, we saw the diamond. We
yeah.
saw the diamond at times with Real Madrid when Jude Bellingham first came in and he didn't have a striker. We've seen him play the 4-3-3. That was the BBC system,
Yeah.
right? The Benzema, Bale, Cristiano. And that even morphed into a 4-4-2 at times out of possession and that kind of stuff. He does different things. He is adventurous. He knows how to set up a team. And for me, the fact that Amorim just can't, if every match, we know he's going to play the 3-4-3. We know
Yeah.
the way they are going to play. And there's no variety. I think what it is right now is that they're easy to prepare against.
I
So
think that's the key point.
I think even if they are doing what the coach wants, because every coach knows exactly what he's going to do, the players look worse. That I think is a part of it we are not talking about. That every coach knows exactly what's coming. They just prepare for it. And Manchester United look worse. But I have to also say I'm very concerned by certain player performance. I think Onana is one
Okay.
because you talked about Onana, you've spoken about him. I just want to touch on it because we've seen him at other clubs. He didn't look this hapless. We saw the mistakes here and there. So there's also that element that maybe the pressure of Manchester United for some of these players is too much.
No, but Onana, I always said was not the kind of signing Manchester United should have made at the time. Some of these signings are mostly about the timing, right, and the structure. Because if you had Andre Onana at Ajax, a very settled structural system, basically grew up in that system after his move from Spain. Very similar to something he would have seen in Spain, actually, at La Masia, because
Yeah.
both of them have at the core of
The,
what
the,
you
the
do,
cultural connection.
cultural connection. You understand? So he'd have been used to it. Went to Inter Milan, which was a very settled system. And I always make that comparison. If you look at the difference between Andrew Onana arriving and his departure and his replacement, Jan Sommer, who is not a goalkeeper who sets the world alight on any day, came
Now
in,
has the clean sheet record.
yeah, came in from Germany and did better than Andrew Onana did behind that
Yeah.
system.
He
In
has the serial clean sheet record now because of the system.
because of the system. So Andrew Onana was never going to be a goalkeeper that I look at and said, look, this goalkeeper is what Manchester United needed at this point. Too erratic, not confident enough. He's one of the worst organizers of a defense I've ever seen. And that is, for me, also a key problem. The fact that the goalkeeper is not a very good organizer. And talking about player performances, what do you make of this, the Bruno conundrum when it comes to Manchester United? Because that also seems to be at the core. But for me, it's not a problem, really. The team actually looked better when he was on the pitch yesterday. And I think for a lot of people, they were like, well, we told you, you can bash him all you want. But this is the one guy who actually knows how to play.
Yeah, I'm a football manager player, so I'll tell you right now, I feel like they made a mistake by not begging him to go to Al Hilal or whoever.
Collect
100
the
million
money.
for Bruno Fernandes at this point. I know he's the best player, but that 100 million could
Mm,
have done a lot, especially with PSI and all. 100 million just like that, bam, on the table at his age. It was too good a deal to turn down. And I'm not going to sit here and say that Bruno is expendable or something. We've seen him when the team is working. We've seen the numbers he can put up. We've seen him. I remember when Bruno Fernandes first joined. You know how FPL is. The goals and assists. Bruno Fernandes was like a cheat code. You knew that once you had Bruno Fernandes, something was coming. Penalties, free kicks, long shots, this, that. We've seen him. We saw him go. Remember when he used to go machine for machine with Kevin De Bruyne at some point?
yeah.
That you don't like. People were arguing that he and Kevin De Bruyne are on the same level. So for me, he's definitely a top player. I rate him a lot, but you have to use him properly. I think that Bruno Fernandes in a double pivot is a waste of his
Well,
talent.
yeah.
And I think that knowing that you have Bruno Fernandes, if you are going to buy two attackers, right?
Mhm.
It should have been one of Mbeumo and Cunha, not both.
Okay.
Because of the way they play, they both are more, they are not out and out strikers. They are better off behind the striker. Then you add Benjamin Šeško to that. So by default, you have to move Bruno back
Mhm.
because it means that you're going to spend 60 million on one of your players and sit on the bench. It doesn't make sense. So I think that's the mistake Manchester United made this summer. Because if you're going to buy those three players, then Bruno has to go.
Yeah.
You can't buy the three and keep Bruno because right now you're putting Bruno and Bruno Fernandes doesn't want to play there. Look at the goal Fulham scored. Part of it was because Bruno Fernandes was sleeping
And he
because
didn't
Bruno
sacrifice.
Fernandes is a number 10 or an advanced 8. Once you put him that double pivot, the type of things he needs to do is not his game. And that's why he was not watching Emil Smith Rowe. And I'm not going to fully blame Bruno Fernandes for that because a coach is supposed to protect players. And
Yeah.
Amorim does not protect Bruno Fernandes by playing him there. And like I said, Bruno Fernandes, I think, would have been perfect for that left 10 position, honest. I think he would have been perfect. I don't think they needed to
He's played
spend
it
60
before.
million
He's
on
played
goalie.
it several times.
Yeah, I think he would have been better there. You buy Mbeumo because, okay, you want that left footer. Then you buy Šeško. Or if you buy Cunha, Cunha plays up top. And you have a more fluid front three. There was no need to buy those three players and keep Bruno Fernandes. There had to be either or. And I think right now is a mistake because you cannot drop Bruno Fernandes. It's not possible. And now that's why we have this Kobe Menu issue because Kobe Menu now wants to go on loan because he knows he's not going to be able to unseat Bruno Fernandes.
Yeah, but he
He
knows.
knows that,
Mhm, go on.
and he knows he's not going to play instead of Casemiro because he's not that defensive type. And I know you are not there. You don't rate Kobe Menu as highly as others.
Zero. Zero.
Yeah, yeah. I think he's an okay player, right? But it's exactly that. If you have to choose between Bruno Fernandes and Kobe Menu as your more advanced number 6 or whatever you want to call it in that system, you will never choose Kobe Menu. And you will never put him as more defensive than Casemiro. So
Yeah.
he's in a place where he cannot succeed because of the way Amorim wants him to play and the players he's competing against. Because even Ugarte is better defensively than him. And I don't think he offers enough going forward to be able to say, okay, I'll play him instead of Bruno. I think the system just doesn't. I think he has that Paul Pogba problem in a way. where his best position is probably in a 4-3-3, where there's other midfielders, one midfielder who's more specialized at defending, one maybe who's a bit more offensive, and he keeps things ticking in the middle. Very simple, a bit of a progressor. When I say that, I mean like he can't play. He's very limited in the way you can use him,
Yeah,
and this system doesn't suit him.
but isn't that also the problem then? I mean, you have a player where a mid-tier player, not yet, hasn't hit his ceiling yet, who you require a system around. You build systems around superstars. You don't build systems around mid-tier players. And
But
I guess that is
but
the conundrum that he faces.
but the truth is, the system doesn't even take advantage of the team's best player either. So the system itself
It's
is
flawed.
not working because right now Bruno Fernandes is in a position where he's going to. And look, the Emil Smith Rowe thing is going to keep happening because these Premier League managers, they have teams of video analysts.
Just
They
watch.
themselves look. I was reading something about how Unai Emery watches about, is it 10 hours of football a day or something like that. So after training, he watches it. He takes his iPad to bed and his wife is sleeping. She's watching Netflix on one iPad. He's watching tactical video. This is what all these coaches do. These coaches are working investment banker hours, watching other teams play football, watching their team play to figure out things. Once they see that Emil Smith Rowe go, next week, let's say Burnley's number 10 does something similar.
Mhm.
Every team is going to keep targeting it. And then you become a problem. And then you realize, okay, I can't play Bruno here. I have to move Bruno up. What does that mean for Sesko in Mbeumo and Cunha? One of them has to sit on the bench. So I think the knock-on effects of this transfer window and not prioritizing the right positions is going to make things worse before it gets better. I think there's a lot of good players there. But looking at these players, this 3-4-2, 3-4-2-1 doesn't suit them better. This team looks better to me if they are playing a 4-2-3-1, a 4-3-3, something else. Because if you keep Bruno Fernandes in that double pivot or whatever you want to call it, you will concede more than you score. And you are not getting the best out of him in other ways. So I don't know. I think
Let's,
Amorim has to be a bit more flexible. Even if he tried a 3-5-2 maybe,
Mhm.
and ease some of the defensive pressure on Bruno, and maybe rotated those three attackers they have between those two positions regularly. Because some games Sheshko will be better. Some games Cunha and Mbeumo will be better. I think that might work because if he's so wedded to having three defenders, three centre backs, the least he can do is be a bit more flexible. Maybe one day 3-4-1-2. Maybe one day, like you have to just kind of be moving things around. You keep your three, you keep your four. Then whatever you do with the other three at the front, move things around, make it interesting. Because if you keep it the same, I don't think they'll get any joy.
Well, Amorim definitely needs to figure things out, and I would not be surprised if he spends some money on a central midfielder before the window shuts later this week. I don't know if they're going to get who they think they want, but I definitely think that the most prudent thing to do will be to close that. What's the kid's name? Lamen's deal in goal because he definitely needs to go. Because, like you're saying, the one thing about club football these days is there are just a million video analysts sitting down, just pouring down over games, just checking the mistakes that have been made. Everybody realized that Manchester United is weak from set pieces, corner kicks, and the likes. And every team basically at the moment is just loading the penalty boxes with players. Like you're saying, the blind runs that are coming in from central midfielders into spaces that they know that Bruno Fernandes is not marking, it's going to keep happening. It's not going to stop. So he will need to prioritize that position one way or the other. Otherwise, he might as well just resign. And perhaps that cryptic message, we're hearing this morning that the team go back to Manchester at 1 by 7 a.m. He was in the office. He intends to have a break. He intends to have a meeting with the management of Manchester United during the international break. But I think the biggest conversation he needs to have himself, and from the conversation you and I have had, is whether this being wired to this system is all that I need to know. Because certainly in a year or two, he's going to be a relic. You can't be a coach who just knows how to play one way in this day and age of modern football. You're getting figured out too easily. You require certain kind of players too easily. Clubs are not going to buy into that. He might end up becoming, in the
Which
end,
is why Liverpool rejected him because he said he would not change from the 3-4-2-1. And they said, well, we might not have the players for that. And we are not going to overhaul this squad for you. So either you come and adapt to the players, or we are not going to. And that's why Liverpool chose Arne Slot, because Arne Slot said, give me the players. I'll work with them in my way.
Let's move on then to but let's stay with the Manchester United side, but for them an outgoing baby Sue, Argentina Sue, aka Alejandro Garnacho, finally got his dream move to Chelsea. I'm elated that he's gone. Look, I've seen my fair share of wingers. People will point at his numbers and say, look, he's a good player for his age. His numbers
What
are really
numbers?
high.
What numbers?
I'm just saying, people look at his numbers. That's what the argument is. People look at his numbers and say, look, he's what, 2021, scored X number of goals over the past couple of seasons, has X number of assists over the past number of seasons. But I look at a player who can't play with space without space ahead of him, doesn't work in tight spaces, has horrible 1v1. His shooting is erratic. Yes, was there room for him to improve? Yes, but his attitude is not worth all that. So 40 million pounds plus 10% add-ons, I say fantastic deal. Goodbye to baby Sue. Yeah, somebody will say, what the heck are you talking about? Manchester United needs players like that. No, Manchester United doesn't need players like that. So good riddance to bad rubbish.
You see, I think Manchester United is I think Manchester United right now they overhype some of their youngsters, whether they are that good or not. I think Garnacho is okay. I think because their team is bad, when you come in and you look okay, they're impressed. My whole thing about Kobe Manu when he started and he came, I felt Manchester United hadn't seen a competent midfielder since Paul Pogba. So Manu looking competent became the next best thing. He's going to light the world on fire. This is the best young midfielder in England and things. I felt that was where it's coming from. Garnacho is exciting. He has his moments. I personally am not particularly impressed with him. Same thing. You've not had a top winger for a while, so you're excited. You bought Jadon Sancho to fix a problem. He's not doing it. You sacked Marcus, right? I think Manchester United, there's that whole parenting thing,
Yeah.
Busby Babes, class of 92. There's this culture in Manchester United about promoting youth players and expecting them to perform, which is admirable. I think it's one of the greatest things about the club, which is why the Kobe Manu thing is so upsetting for a lot of fans. I understand it, I respect it, but we can't sit here and say that some of these guys are the talents they claim to be. Maybe they could be with better coaching in a better environment. Maybe they could be in a few years. But to me, I'm not seeing it. And I think playing for Manchester United the way it is, I think we don't pick up good habits. I think that's what's killed Marcus Rashford in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Marcus Rashford had enough good influences in his career, in my opinion, because I think from a very young age, there was a lot expected of him, and he was considered a dressing room leader too early. I think for me, because when I look at Marcus Rashford, this is a guy who can dribble, can use both feet. We see him play the occasional free kick. He has the speed, but terrible decision making. He looks very uncoached when he plays. So his ability and his production don't match. You see a player like Anthony Martial, similar situation, which is why his career has not hit the heights it's meant to hit. And you can talk about a lot of Manchester United players who have come through the years like that. So for me, I think Garnacho could be a decent player, but I wasn't seeing it yet. And I think he was a bit overhyped by Manchester United fans. And like you said, they've gotten a good deal for him. And for PSR reasons, he's pure profit. So great sell. But I don't know why Chelsea are so interested in Garnacho. But anyway, Chelsea seem to sell very well. So maybe they have a plan and they think they can get 70 or 80 million for him in 2 years. So let's see how that goes. But
And
for
just
me,
and just in the past hour or so, Xavi Simons to Tottenham Hotspurs also looks done. Basically, reports of a fixed amount of 60 million plus add-ons, and that's 60 million in euros plus add-ons. What problem does he fix at Spurs?
Um, nothing really. I believe they have enough players, but you see, the problem is that a lot of these players seem to be getting Madison. It seems like his fitness,
Oh yeah,
Kulisevsky, the same thing, and it looks like they were trying to get Izzy. They didn't get him, so he's the second choice. Nice central attacking midfielder, and he's very young. I think that's his biggest advantage. This is a player who has a lot of room to grow. But again, I was listening to another podcast. Someone said something, and I quite agree. There's a lot of project players at Spurs. Odebe is young. Tell is young. There's a lot of young players. We're
Val.
not sure about their exact Bergval, actually great. There's a lot of young players. We're not sure about their trajectory who are at Spurs right now. So I think he's a good signing because he has performed in the Bundesliga at times. But from what you hear from Bundesliga analysts, he's a bit inconsistent. He's still finding his form. when he's good, he's good. And when he's bad, he's very anonymous. So I think the fact that Spurs have some other players who are who are there, and he's not going to have to carry the load on his own. Kudus is there, Tell is there, Odebel, like I said. He's not going to have to do it alone. So I think it will work out for him for now. When I look at it, Kulusevski and Madison will come back at some point. So it's a very interesting project Spurs are building. A lot of very young, flexible players they can do a lot with, move around, do different things. So yeah, I like the signing, but for me, I believe Spurs is just to have more firepower. It's just, I think it's also to keep the fans happy because the fans felt a bit somewhere after the Eze thing, especially losing him to Arsenal. So, and it gives goodwill to the coach because Thomas Frank has started well. You don't want to erode the goodwill he has by not backing him in the market and making fans feel that you wasted us winning the Europa League, you haven't bought players. So the fans being in a good mood, it eases some of the pressure on Thomas Frank. There's less pressure on the board because Daniel Levy is not very popular despite all of these things. So I think it's a good signing for a lot of reasons, but I'm not sure about how much it will translate on the pitch. But I think for the morale of the squad, the morale around the club, the atmosphere, I think it's a great signing for those reasons. And sometimes that's just as important about whether he'll perform. So
Yeah, so let's hop on from England to the other side, and you guys, you know what to do. Always hit the subscribe button. So Sue and I do this once a week. Maybe we'll try and do this more when we have more time and more.
we want to try twice a week, but right now we are doing one. When we
Yeah,
figure out our schedules, yeah.
yeah. So but still subscribe. So let's talk money, and I keep getting asked a lot by some of the people like on Twitter and Facebook. What's the whole shindig with Spain? And you can register players at this time, you can register players at this time. Barcelona, we see every single season for the past 3 years go through this process. There was a league game, I think, between Sevilla and another team where basically half of
Each
the
team
team,
had
Sevilla
five players.
players,
Each team had five players in the stands. They hadn't
they
registered. Yeah,
hadn't
I think it
registered,
was
they hadn't registered
Sevilla and Getafe. I
and
think
Getafe.
Sevilla and Getafe. Yeah.
You know, what is going on in Spain that is what is it with money and the registration? Why don't they have money in Spain? Why are they broke? The England boys are chilling. Explain that.
Well, Premier League money. You see, I always say the Premier League is the Super League because if you look at the top 20 richest clubs in the world right now,
Yeah.
I think about 11 or 12 are Premier League teams
Mm-hmm.
or something ridiculous like that. It's a lot of Premier League teams in there. At least, even West Ham, my top 20 richest club in the world right now. You wouldn't think it, but they're up there. So I think Spain is very simple. I think before Javier Tebas became Spanish FA president, a lot of clubs were in serious financial trouble,
Mm-hmm.
right? So he saw this situation and he created a new spending limit
Tibas is
system.
La
So
Liga. Tibas is La Liga.
La Liga president, not FA. Yeah, sorry, La Liga president. Thank you for the correction. I think a lot of clubs were in trouble in the football pyramid. So he thought about this and like, look, we need a system to fix this. So the spending limit and why the registration rules keep happening is that so the La Liga clubs have a formula of how much they can spend. It's spend, not even just on players and stuff. So spend on everything. Stadium maintenance, player salaries, transfers, whatever. They can spend maybe, so let's say you are Real Madrid, you can spend 100, right?
Yeah.
Based on your revenue. But the revenue and then minus your debts and that kind of stuff. So they tell you how much you can spend. So based on that calculation, that's why the registration rules come in. Because when you're above a certain limit, they tell you how much of your future income can be put towards the budget. So that's why you hear about Barcelona being in 1-to-1, are trying to get to 1-to-1, right?
Yeah.
Because the 1-to-1 means that they can spend every euro that comes in, they can spend it. A lot of the time, they've been in 1-to-2, 1-to-3. So for every €3 that come in, they can spend one, that kind of thing. So the whole idea is that you don't want football clubs going bust. And I think this is important because we've seen it in football a lot. We've seen Fiorentina go to Serie C. We've seen Napoli go to Serie C, all because of financials. We've seen Parma go to Serie C. We've seen what happened to Leeds. We've seen what's happened to Sunderland. So you see teams having financial trouble all the time. Look at Bordeaux. Bordeaux, one of the best, the grand teams in France, relegated to the fourth tier because of financial issues. I know a lot of people don't like it, but the truth is, a lot of football clubs, they just keep spending and spending money they don't have. hoping to eventually reach the promised land and then pay it all back. But it's a rat race. You're going to keep spending money to stay in that position. So for me, Tebas has made a difficult decision. He's decided to prioritize the long-term future of Spanish football by making it difficult for clubs to bankrupt themselves. And obviously, the clubs are not happy because football has run on this system where clubs are always spending money they don't necessarily have on the promise of tomorrow. I think football is one of those things where debt is okay because a lot of clubs are in debt. But eventually, it reaches a point where clubs have to, someone has to tell them that, look, it's time to stop. So I support Javier Tebas. I know it's not very popular, but he has to keep doing what he's doing because for me, he has to keep like we've seen too many football clubs go bust. And I think for me, it's more important that football clubs stay sustainable, they stay in business because these are community projects. They employ loads of people. And just the look at a town like Villarreal,
Yeah.
where the town of Villarreal alone is what 30 to 5,000 people, and their stadium is 40,000. And they're able to fill that stadium because the people around come. The Ceramica they make tiles and that kind of stuff. I'm sure you can buy Ceramica tiles in Accra if you look around hard enough. They own the club. They put money into it. It's a community project. Now imagine if Mr. Ceramica, I don't know the family name, but I'll just call them the Ceramica family. Mr. Ceramica has a son who decides Villarreal has to win the Champions League. And he pumps money, pumps money, pumps money. Money that Villarreal doesn't have. The business has 1 or 2 bad years, which we've seen with other teams. The Chinese Super League. What happened after COVID? Clubs were just shut down like that because the billionaire owners decided that this is not a sustainable model. And even I can give you an example that everyone sees. AC Milan. A lot of the people don't realize that the reason why AC Milan has had a lot of problems was Silvio Berlusconi was not running it like a business. He was just putting money in it to kind of, I want to win things. And it reached a point, his company had been handed over to his daughter. So his daughter said, this asset loses too much money. I'm not going to allow you to continue wasting our money on something that doesn't make money. So Berlusconi stopped investing. And because the club was not built to make profits, they started becoming poor. If you remember, 2012, that's why they sold Thiago Silva and Ibrahimovic to PSG because the club was not making money. If you remember the signings Milan used to make at the time, they'll look at who the PL teams, Real Madrid, Barca want to get rid of, buy them, free transfers, random loans. Look, there's no reason why AC Milan should have been starting players like Gabriel Paletta, Kevin Constant, those type of players. That's not AC Milan level, but there was no money. And that's because the club was not run seriously. So when it came time for the club to generate its own revenue, renew their team, there was no system. The youth system was not invested in. And that is what happens. Look at Malaga. If you remember the players Malaga were buying.
Oh, yeah.
A good example. Where are they now? You need to run a club like a business or you won't go far. And that's what Javier Tebas is trying to create in La Liga. And that's why it's going to be a lot of short-term pain. It's going to keep being that way. But if you don't have the revenue streams to spend money like the Premier League and you don't run your club like a business, you don't run it sustainably, we're going to see a lot of clubs collapsing. And that's what he's trying to stop. So for me, it's very admirable. Short-term pain. People will tell you that he's killing the league and that kind of stuff. But what will kill the league faster? Clubs going out of business or clubs not just spending money ridiculously? I think for me, this is the lesser of two evils by far. So I think people should relax on Javier Tebas. I know, and he's a bit of I'm trying to find the word. He's abrasive. He's abrasive as well. So it doesn't help. But I think his goals are very admirable. So I'm not going to knock it at all. I'm a big supporter of it because football clubs are not as sustainable as they pretend to be. And when someone makes them sustainable, we are seeing the issues with them. Because if they were run sustainably, why would they be such a problem?
Interesting. And let's do a bit of Italy because we need to touch on your own AC Milan that you mentioned. Interesting summer for them. What's at stake? They've brought in Nkuku because they let Noah Okafor go, but they needed a reliable frontman because it doesn't look like Santi Jimenez brought the goals with him when he was coming from Holland. Didn't start the league also too well. Just a bit of chaos there. But generally, outside of Napoli at the moment, not a lot of teams look reliable. Well, and Inter Milan as well, of course. And Inter Milan have started the league well. They're a machine. They're a constant machine. They know what to do.
Yeah, but I don't know. But you see, the machine was the Simone Inzaghi machine. I don't know how much of it Christian Kivu can keep running. I don't know if he's the right mechanic to kind of upgrade the system, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So Kivu is a decent young coach, former player. So you have that respect. But I
Mm.
don't know about his coaching ability. So for me, Inter question mark. And we know Napoli with Antonio Conte, once he has the team in Europe, they are not as they are not as good. We've seen there's always that European job. In fact, his European record is very poor, but they've added Kevin De Bruyne, so fair play. I mean, with Kevin De Bruyne, and I think, look, let's be honest. I know a lot of people won't like this, but I'll say it anyway. I think Romelu Lukaku is one of the most underrated players of the last 10 years.
Oh
I'll
yeah.
I'll stick it.
I
I'll
think
stick it.
I think Romelu Lukaku is one of the reasons why I hate Twitter tacticals because I think that Twitter tacticals are one of the reasons why Romelu Lukaku became so unpopular at Manchester United. You don't have a person with that kind of goal scoring record in your team. Every striker goes through difficult periods. Show me a striker who had a clear 10-year career where there wasn't a blip. But then people started talking about, oh, he has a poor first touch. He has a poor this, he has a Romelu Lukaku would have been a reliable goal scorer for Manchester. He's been a
And
reliable goal scorer in most places that he's been.
the thing is, I think that was also some structural issue because I think he found out when he went to Inter, he had like an autoimmune something
Something, yes.
that
So
was
yeah,
making him
he was
gain
gaining
weight
weight.
or something. Exactly. So some of these things is not just look, but I understand Lukaku because Lukaku has the strikers are remembered more for their misses than their goals. And Lukaku has some howlers in his collection. So people will never give him that credit, but he's a great striker. And look, he was great for Napoli last season. So for me, I like what Napoli are doing. They have good players and then that kind of stuff. Great striker, great goal record. We've seen him win Serie A twice already. He's
Yeah.
going for his hat trick. I'm happy for him. So
They're
yeah,
winning. You think
then
Napoli are winning it? They're your favorites, clear favorites?
they have to be because I'm not sure about Juventus as well. Because again, a rookie coach, Igor Tudor,
Yeah.
AC Milan, they haven't
Well,
started well.
Tudor is a rookie coach. Tudor is actually the one who changed Hellas Verona
Yeah,
before
but
he
when I
went to
mean
leave
rookie
Marseille.
coaches, rookie coach at the top level, because Marseille, he didn't last too long.
Yeah, he
I think he
wasn't happy
lasted
there.
one season.
Yeah.
Hellas Verona, it's when you punch above your weight, sustaining it too is hard. When I say rookie coach, it's rookie at the for a top team.
Okay.
So Tudor is not a bad coach, but I don't know his pedigree. You see, then Milan, I know Allegri's pedigree, but Allegri himself, I don't know if he's washed. I don't know if he's the same Allegri who won us the league the last time. Because that Allegri, I like that Allegri. I remember when Allegri got Balotelli, saved us, got us to the Champions League. I remember the Allegri that got Juventus to, was it 2 Champions League finals?
Yeah.
So it's not this. This is a coach I rate a lot, but I don't know if it's that same Allegri at Milan currently. So it's be an interesting one. Those are really it's always the big three, and usually Napoli. Roma have Gasperini. Let's see whether that's able to do some. He's able to do something there because I think he can bring the best out of Dybala and some of the other guys, Evan Ferguson. So it will be interesting. But I think all things considered, it's Napoli for me just because I think they have the best coach and the best talent mix.
Okay.
So, Godfred, I've noticed something about our Ghana Premier League. It seems like every transfer window, our teams are buying 10, 12, 15 players. Why is there such a high turnover? And is it actually sustainable? Is it working? Can you just break this down for me?
It's
Because
it's
from the, it just doesn't make sense to me.
it's an interesting question, Zuzu, and it doesn't work. Okay. Um, I think over the past decade or so, just the general quality of scouting talent ID and player registration has declined in the Ghana Premier League. So you have teams just taking gambles on recommendations. I must admit there are certain teams. So a team like Samatex, a team like BBN Gold Stars, pay attention to their video footage a lot. So they are subscribed to like View, they're on Eyeball and others, and they have an expansive coaching network. So, and Accra Lions, until they left the league, you would go to most games and you'll find a scout, an official scout from these teams. They're making notes on players that they are interested in, and whatnot. But for the Kumasi Asante Kotoko, the Accra folks, and many of the teams in the league, they rely on a fan saw a player somewhere, or the CEO or the team manager.
Don't tell me this. A fan saw a player where
Oh, it happens. Like a fan saw a player somewhere. I'll tell you the biggest recommendation, those who recommend players a lot. And this will surprise you. Referees. Referee.
fair enough because they are in the game, they are watching, they are
Yes,
seeing things we won't see. So
yes.
fair enough. It's
Referees,
just funny.
referees are the biggest recommenders of players in the Ghana Premier League. So you'll be there, referee will call you and say, "Yo, I went to referee a game here. This team has this player." And so teams tend to kind of compile this and then also move with friendly reputations and also recommendations from other asides. So you might end up in a season where Accra folk have calls from 3 or 4 people that they trust. They say, you have to sign this player. Irrespective of what the player has done that entire season, his fitness, whether he fits into a system, how much he will cost, his sell-on value, what type of player can he become, what his ceiling is, they'll just go out and sign that player. Say for Kumasi Sancho. And a typical example is a player they signed this window. He's called Johnson Opon. They signed him this window and released him this window. So
Wow.
you ask yourself, and the season hasn't started. So basically, they signed the player during the off season, watched him during
Wow.
preseason, and came to the conclusion that this player is not good enough. And if you check Kumasi Sancho, for instance, they've added 14 players this window at my last count. There have been
As usual.
they have been some exits, but last season was the same. Last season they added 14 other new players. The season before, I think it was 16 or so. So in 3 seasons, you are looking at close to 50 players being integrated into a professional football team, and that cuts across most of the teams in the Premier League. And so you end up having a league where there isn't a lot of players who are developing. So you ask yourself, when was the last time a player actually blew up in the Ghana Premier League at one team where you could say that that player was developed through this particular system as a pro? That's why none of those things are happening with the teams in the Ghana Premier League, simply because the way and manner in which the signings are made is not sustainable. Then another thing that happens is you realize a lot of the players end up signing 2-year contracts, which is it seems to be the norm. Not everybody signs 2-year contracts in the Ghana Premier League. Some players will sign 3 years, some will sign 2 years with an option to extend. Let me break down for you as well. So what happens is some of the players, a lot of the players, again, in the past decade, have come to realize that it's easy for them to seek greener pastures when they are free players. That's they are free transfers because a lot of teams don't like paying transfer fees. Now, a lot of the leagues that these players are looking at entering are not the lucrative leagues. So we are looking at leagues around Africa, some leagues in the Middle East, and not the more prestigious ones. And if
Yeah, I remember was it Emmanuel Nete? He went to Iraq
yes,
after winning the Ghana Premier
Premier
League.
League, so not the more lucrative ones which can afford to pay. And even if it's the more lucrative ones, they go to the second or third tier of those leagues, which is of course not the top tier. Okay, so these teams are not ready to pay a transfer fee, although what they have on offer is a more reasonable wage. So you have the player, if he is free, can leave his contract with his Gold Stars or his Mediama and go to Jordan, Oman, Iraq, collect his $3,000 or $4,000 for himself, collect a handsome signing on fee if the team is a big team of maybe $20,000, $30,000. But that is money the team can spend, but will not be willing to spend if, in addition to that, they have to pay a team $150,000 or $200,000 to acquire that player. So to safeguard themselves from that, a lot of Ghana Premier League players prefer to sign 2-year contracts. Why? The first year, if they move to a club, is to establish themselves. So they know that in my first year, I might not start too many games, but my second year, if I've performed well, I've showcased myself, it's a good time to go. If things are not working out, then they can say, I will extend by that additional year, or I will go to another team in the league. But most of them sign 2-year contracts or 2 years plus one, mostly with an eye on exiting the Ghana Premier League, which is why you have almost 80% of Ghana Premier League contracts being 2-year contracts, simply because the players just want to leave. They don't like the security of long-term contracts here because there is no value in the long-term.
It's not security. Well, it's security,
It
but
is
it's
security.
it's more like prison. They see it as prison. That's the step. And you
Yo,
know that I'm glad you brought this up because it's funny because when you look at the transfer market, you know that website transfer market, there are kind
yeah.
of stats about the league that exports the most players. It's the Ghana Premier League. But if you look at the value per player,
Mhm.
it's so low. It's almost like if we export 100 players, the average transfer fee will be kind of like 10,000, 20,000, and that's so low. And you would think if all these clubs are exporting so many players, why are they not making more money? Why is there no more money coming into the league for them to invest in the league? So for me, it's just like you said, this is the reason they are signing short contracts so they can leave as soon as possible.
Yeah.
I understand them because we spoke about wages the last time. I remember one time I texted you and asked you the average salary in the Ghana Premier League, and you told me it's like 2,500 CDs or something like that.
Yeah, that's the average.
And and considering the length of a football career,
Mm,
if you are telling me that your prime earning years, a career that's going to be over by the time you are 32,
yeah.
that in your prime earning years, you're going to earn maybe at best 15,000 CDs a month, right? Let's just say if you're a decently paid player, it's not a career that's going to sustain you for life because by 32, you are done. So I understand the players completely. I think we need to do something about it. I think the first thing that needs to go up is the wages. That's the first thing.
Well, it depends.
Because without that, I don't see any reason for any player to stay. And I wouldn't advise them to stay.
Yeah, but you are the numbers person, and you need revenue to
Yeah,
maximize
you-
your. There's no
100%.
and the Ghana Premier League
100%.
zero revenue, like absolutely zero revenue. So
Yeah, I mean, you go to a stadium, it's empty. Sponsorship deals are not big. And look, the truth is the league is poorly marketed. We can talk about the ills of the league all day, all night, because honestly, I feel like one of the simple things that a mistake the Ghana Premier League has made is this Star Times deal. I think it's a huge mistake.
you mean the
And it's
old one?
because
You mean the old starter
yeah,
because it's
because
no
I
longer
think
in existence?
yeah, but I think it was a huge mistake because after the whole Kwesi Nyantechi thing, you are trying to revamp the league. Putting the league behind a paywall
Yes, it didn't make sense.
just was not, it didn't make sense. And I got the Star Times decoder, right? But it wasn't that expensive and that kind of stuff. But because it's something different, it's not something you're used to. After a while of paying, if you're not watching a lot of it, you're thinking to yourself, why am I using this money? You see, so for me, I think that was the first mistake. And by doing that and locking the league off, the kind of access and interest people would have had in the league that would have made people do stuff with the league just didn't happen. So people kind of have forgotten about the league because that first season when we came back, people were interested when Hearts won. Look at the kind of interest we had,
Yeah.
even with Star Times. And now they've just let the momentum go.
Yeah, sadly, but hopefully they can bring it back. So that is the business with the Ghana Premier League scouting as you've done, you as transfers as you wanted to know. But just to wrap this up, let's the Ghana Black Stars are in action. They're coming. We are entering the international break. You are even going on your own international kind of break, but that's fine. But Ghana has to play against Chad and then against Mali in a World Cup qualifying group that it looks all but done for the Ghana Black Stars.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how Otuado managed it.
It will take a
He's
disaster class of epic proportions for Ghana not to make it out of this one way or the other. I think it's a 5 points lead also in that,
yeah.
and there aren't a lot of games left. But just your general thoughts on the squad that he's called up? I look at it and I say he's stuck with his core team. Generally, everybody's there.
Yeah. I think for me, what I always say is important is that we have to pick players who are playing at a decent level to start.
Mm,
I think that that's one of the most important things because our local league is so weak. The players who leave and the level they find themselves at is very important to pick the best of the best. So a good example is Derek Athakun.
yeah.
He's not playing much, But the fact that he's a Bundesliga sub is something that makes me feel like, okay, we can get something out of him. And we've had weak fullbacks and that kind of stuff. So I think that the squad is okay. He's, like you said, he's stuck to the core. Players who are playing for good teams and that kind of stuff are in the squad. I'm not really sure about the kind of the midfield options, you know. I
Mm-hmm.
think there's a bit too many defensive midfielders there. That's the one thing I will say. I don't like how defensive Otto is because the team is defensive, but we are not compact. It annoys me so much because you have to pick a struggle, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, but Otto coaching is another conversation altogether. I don't want to get into it. But for me, when I look at where our players are playing and the level they are at, this is if I had to pick the top 30 Black Stars players, most of these guys will be in the top 30. So for me, that's okay. Because at the end of the day, the first thing is pick the best possible players, and then the coach can kind of do his thing and work on them. So that's fine. I think the players he's picked, obviously, there's always some names who could be there. There's always someone who deserves to be there. There's always some one guy looking at him funny. But generally speaking, I think this is a very good team. The one person I'll say me, I have an anti-Ghana Premier League bias. I'm sure a lot of people have noticed, but I'll talk about it. If you remember our whole Benjamin Asare conversation, are we
Yeah.
sure he's our number one? That's the one thing that's bothering me right now. Are
He's,
we sure he's the best
he,
keeper with
he's,
a Ghanaian passport?
he might not be everybody's cup of tea, but those who put him in the goalpost will tell you that at this moment, he works for the system. It's not about talent, it's not about
Mm.
upside, it's not about future projections for them, although it should be. But in international football, it's about results. And
Yeah, yeah.
what they will tell you is
Understandable.
that for now, in their system, he gets them a result until he doesn't get them a result, which is what the strategy has always been with the other goalkeepers. And if you look at I always say this, the track record of the other goalkeepers does not give them too much of an excuse to say, I'm better than this one. You can say that at club football, because at TCK, for instance, I don't think you become an African goalkeeper playing in any type of level in Europe for 5, 6 years without being decent. They'll drop you immediately.
Yeah, yeah.
The Swiss league is not everybody's cup of tea, but he's been a top flight goalkeeper in that league for 5 years now.
And
You know,
I believe he's won some awards there too,
yes, he
if I
plays in a
remember
very
correctly.
bad
So
team. He plays in a very bad team, but
yeah,
he does a job. But
yeah.
that is not his national team record, and how he's performed has not been to the level where you would say he gives me the greatest
And he's been
assurance of a win.
unfairly treated as well. We can't say he's been unfairly
Yeah,
treated.
yeah,
He
he's
might be
not
the
been.
best keeper, but his performances, and I'm glad you mentioned the whole African, and that is one of the problems with our football system as a whole. We are giving the Europeans too much control of our football in terms of giving them all our players to develop.
Yeah,
Because look at how young our top players go. I mean, aside right to dream, it's very difficult to think of a place in Ghana that's even producing players that you can mention. A lot of guys, maybe someone comes and picks them up, they go to Europe, they develop them. Because how early did Thomas Partey go to Europe?
quite
By
a
18, 19. It was
most
quite
of
a by 18, 19, he was there. Salisu, same thing. So many of our players. And then we have all these foreign born players. And the truth is, it's going to get worse. A lot of people I know are not fans of the foreign born players. They think they don't care and that kind of stuff, that they are rejects of their home country and all of that kind of stuff. All of that is partly true. But at the end of the day, who is being developed in Ghana? Look at even someone like Isaku. He's a
mm,
very good example. Look at how much he's improved by going to Europe. Look at how much pressure he put on him when he first joined the Black Stars to kind of perform and that kind of stuff, and how raw he looked. And because of how raw he looked, he had a lot of very poor performances. When I see him at Leicester now, can see why he was getting those chances. What the coaches saw
yeah,
that was not translating. I'm seeing that now. But that's because he went to Sporting. He had to play. And apparently, when he spoke to people about having to be coached at Sporting and the things he had to go through, he felt like he was relearning football. And football development is not there. I remember me and you went to watch an under 15, and some of the things you saw and we spoke about, about at the basic at 15 the mistakes they were doing, which were not going to serve them in the future. So all of these things build up. We are going to keep relying on foreign nationals, and we are going to have these foreign people, and we are going to keep collecting them because we don't have a cultural identity as a football nation once we are bringing all these foreign nationals. Because if you have Semenyo who's trained in England, he has an English football education.
Yeah.
You have Salisu, you have Jiku, French football education. Salisu and Pate, Spanish
Spanish.
football education. That I think is part of our problems as a national team. All these different football educations, because if you are Spain, for example, you might have one or two guys who were not brought up in Spain in the national team, right? One or two guys who are not raised in the Spanish football
Yeah.
system. Because look at Euro 2008. Marcos Senna has a Brazilian football education. Everyone else around him had a Spanish football education. So he had the football intelligence to be able to get into their system and play with them. Ours is like there's not one single identity that we can look at and say that this is our football identity and build on. So I think that that's where Otto Addo's problem starts. I think Otto Addo is also a bad coach. I'm not going to sit here and defend him. I think he's also a bad coach, but I don't think he's held by some of these things. And I think that whoever is coach is going to struggle with their cohesion because of the fact that we are calling on the foreign nationals. But I also can't say we shouldn't call on them because they're the best players
Yeah.
because they have had better football education that has maximized their talent. Because I don't think, because it's the same Ghanaian genetics they are using to come and play for Ghana.
Yeah.
They are Ghanaians. It's the same genetics. So if those guys are good enough, and we see some of our players playing for other national teams, Nico Williams is a good example. What is not, I'm not going to parrot right wing talking points, but as a person, he's Ghanaian. His genetic makeup is Ghanaian, right?
Mm.
What is different is the football education to maximize his talent and play for another country. We have so many, we should have as many Nico Williamses running around because his parents are Ghanaian. You get my say. That's how I feel about a lot of these things, you know. Jerome Boateng, good example. Same thing, Ghanaian DNA, but we are not able to maximize our talent the same way. So I think the the grassroots need to be fixed. And look, the problem is fixing the grassroots. It means we won't see the results for 15 years. So people are not happy. So
Nobody has
what
to
year is
for
it?
that.
Yeah, you are in 2025. If we start today, AFCON 2041 will be there.
Thank you very much, Sister Gray. Always a pleasure sitting down with you. Have a good evening, and thank you very much.